Like and respect. Hello students, welcome again to a new session at Educators Plus. I am Akarshi, your English faculty at Educators Plus. So students, we have completed the post-colonial part 1. I have discussed important authors. First of all, I have discussed about what you mean by the post-colonial writings. Okay, so I have explained what you mean by post-colonial writings, which countries or continents come under the post-colonial writings, and who were the authors of this particular umbrella term, that is post-colonial writings. Okay, so I have discussed some of the authors in my previous lecture, and the rest of the authors I will be discussing today in this lecture of post-colonial literature. Students, I hope you are doing well. Can you just let me know in the chat box? Are you all fine? Are you enjoying the sessions and getting a lot of substance out of these sessions? Okay, and also please let me know in the session, am I audible and visible to you properly? Yes? Okay, so now let's begin the class. So today we are going to study the rest of the authors or writers of the post-colonial writings, and please mind it, these authors are really very important from your examination point of view. ठीक है, जो हमने पहली क्लास में डिस्कस करा था, those are also important, but if I just go for the superlative degree of important, then these writers are the most important part of your post-colonial writings. Okay, so please pay a special attention to these writers and the works associated with them. Okay, let's not waste much of the time and let's begin the class. So now first writer is Chinua Achebe. Okay, so this is a very important writer of the African descent. Okay, and he is most highly regarded as an African writers in English. Okay, so he has a special place in the English literature when it comes to African writings. Okay, and he won the Man Booker Prize in 2007. Okay, please remember he is a Man Booker Prize, Man Booker awardee novel. Okay, he won the Man Booker Prize in literature. Fine, so please remember this particular point. Okay, so now let's come to his works. So he has written some notable works, and these are works, all works are very important from the next point of view. So the first is Things Fall Apart. Okay, so this is a very important work, and Things Fall Apart is an English language novel by Nigerian author Chinua Achebe. Okay, so he is a Nigerian author and he has written Things Fall Apart in English language. Okay, and this novel shows the life of the character. And who was the character? Okongwu was a character. Okay, it shows the life of the character Okongwu. So please check the spelling once. So Okongwu was the character, and he was a leader and a local wrestling champion in Umuofia. So what was the name of the place? It was Umuofia. Okay, it is the name of the place. So he was a local wrestling champion. Please mind it that Okongwu, who was a character in Things Fall Apart, he was a wrestling champion in Umuofia. And what was Umuofia? It is a fictional group of 9 villages in Nigeria. Okay, so it is not a real place. It is basically a fictional place of 9 villages. Okay, so Umuofia is a chain of 9 villages in Nigeria, and this village has been inhabited by Igbo people. Okay, so in the novel you might see the spelling is Ibo. Okay, so Igbo people forms the major natives of this particular place, Umuofia. Okay, so this was all about Things Fall Apart. Also remember, the title of Things Fall Apart has been taken from W.B. Yeats' Second Coming. Okay, so when I just taught you W.B. Yeats, I told you this title on this quotation from the Second Coming has been adopted as a title of Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart. So W.B. Yeats की Second Coming से ये title लिया गया है. Please remember this point, very important point it is. Okay, the Things Fall Apart title has been taken from W.B. Yeats' The Second Coming, and this particular work had an immense effect on the African literature and its reception. Okay, so as you say that when we're studying about the Indian writers, I told you R.K. Narayan, Raja Rao, Mulraj Anand, these were the initial writers who started the English writings in in English. ठीक है, so Indian writings को English का version और kind of a turn किसने दिया था? These writers, Mulkraj Raja Rao and R.K. Narayan. Okay, and similarly in African literature also, when we talk about like initial writer New Vitheong, or you can say Naruddin Farah and this Chinua Achebe, these were the initial writers who started writing in English from the African descent. Okay, so that's a very remarkable work in African literature, and this work has set Chinua Achebe as as a very great writer. It has helped him to earn a notable reputation in the history of African literature. Okay, and please remember this work, Things Fall Apart, has been set in Nigeria, which is also a native village of Chinua Achebe. Okay, and it tells the story of Okongwu. I told you he was a wrestling champion, and he was one of the elder of Ibo tribe of village Umuofia. Okay, and what was Umuofia? Umuofia is a set of 9 villages in Nigeria. It is a fictional setting, and basically this work, in this work, Okongwu has been portrayed as a leader of the headman of, and he has been rose to the power of headman of the village. Okay, so this was all about the work Things Fall Apart. So please remember the details which I have told you about this particular work. Any problem? Okay, if you have any problem, you can just post in the chat box. Next is No Longer at Ease. Again, this is a very important work of Chinua Achebe, and the title is the quotation from T.S. Eliot, Journey of the Maggie. ठीक है, तो T.S. Eliot ने एक work लिखा था, Journey of Maggie. Journey of Maggie. ठीक है, उसने एक वर्क लिखा था, तो उसका जो कोटेशन है दैट हैज बीन यूज एज अ टाइटल फॉर द वर्क नो लॉन्गर एट ईज. ओके, एंड इट इज अ स्टोरी ऑफ ओकोंगवो's ग्रैंडसन ओबी. सो ओकोंगवो वाज अ मेन कैरेक्टर इन थिंग्स फॉल अपार्ट. तो उसका जो ग्रैंडसन था ओबी, एंड उसका ये स्टोरी है एंड हाउ ही कोलैप्सेस, and this actually work shows the collapse of his idealism. ठीक है, so it is a story of Obi. And who was Obi? Obi was grandson of Okongwu, and how his idealism has been collapsed. This theme has been portrayed in this work, No Longer at Ease. Okay, so Obi is sponsored by his villagers to travel to England to study law, but Obi, however, elects to study English. ठीक है, so basically he wanted to study English, and how the villagers sponsored his education in England. And whose education it was? It was the education of Obi, who was the grandson of Okongwu. ठीक है, and the tale is embedded in a narrative and describes Obi trial for accepting bribes. Okay, so he started accepting bribes, so he was tried and presented in the court in this particular work, and how what was the trials going on Obi's name. So all these scenarios has been portrayed in this work, No Longer at Ease. So please remember that कि Obi is his main character is Obi. He was the grandson of Okongwu. Is this clear? Okay, next, Arrow of God. Now this Arrow of God is again a very important work, and the novel is about the portrayal of traditional society at the time of the confrontation with the European society. ठीक है, so traditional society कौन सी थी? Traditional society was the African society, and this is basically a confrontation between the European society and the African society. Now the novel Arrow of God centers in Izulu. ठीक है, centers on Izulu. Izulu was the main character in this particular work, and who was Izulu? Izulu was the chief priest of several Igbo villages in colonial Nigeria. So Igbo setting has been there in all the 3 works. Things Fall Apart, No Longer at Ease, Arrow of God, all have the Igbo setting. And इसमें कौन सा character होता है? Things Fall Apart में तो main character Okongwu होता है. No Longer at Ease में main character is Obi, and Arrow of God में main character is Izulu. Okay, and who was Izulu? Izulu was the priest. Okay, chief priest of the village Igbo in the central Nigeria, whom he confronts the colonial powers and Christian missionaries in the 1920s. ठीक है, so उसने किसको confront करा? He actually, the Christian missionary arrived in the traditional Africa, or you can say Nigeria, and he have a confrontation with those people. And Isilu is the priest of god Ulu. So who was the god? Ulu was the god whom Isilu was to worship, and he used to preach the teachings of Ulu to the people. Now the European civilization has been arrived in Africa, and European culture has been there. And who was a representative of European culture? There was a person named John Goodcountry. ठीक है, John Goodcountry was a person who was actually spreading the missionary education in Nigeria. ठीक है, so Isilu was a character who was the representation of the traditional society of Nigeria, and he is a priest. He used to worship god Ulu, and he had a confrontation with the European society. And who was the representative of the European society? It was John Goodcountry. And who was John Goodcountry? He was a Christian missionary who arrived in village and narrated tales of Nigerians who left their traditional values or bad customs in favor of Christianity. So he was a Christian missionary who was there with a mission for the people of Nigeria to convert into Christianity, and for that he was reciting tales of the Nigerians who had left their bad customs of the traditional African society, and they have become Christian, or the followers of Christianity. Okay, and he succeeded in missionary purpose, and Isilu is left all alone because he was not able to save his people from converting into Christianity, and that's why he was left alone. Okay, and please remember the title Arrow of God refers to Isilu image of himself. Okay, so this arrow of God has been have a symbolic significance, and it refers to Isilu's image of himself, how he takes himself in that particular traditional society who is confronting or who is the verge of converting into Christianity. Am I made myself clear? Have I made myself clear? Is it okay? Okay, so please remember arrow of God, no longer at ease, and things fall apart. Okay, these are called as the African trilogy, as they share the similar settings and themes. I told you these were all having a setting of Igbo village, and shows the portrayal of Igbo tribe. Even no longer at east actually follows the legacy of Kongo's grandson Obi and narrates his adventures. Also, this arrow of God Isilu. So all that have same theme to portray the African tradition, African society in the Igbo village. That's why these three are called as the African trilogy. Please remember this. Things fall apart, no longer at ease, arrow of God are called as the African trilogy, and the title of Things Fall Apart has been taken from W.B. Yeats' Second Coming. No longer at ease का title लिया गया from the quotation of T.S. Eliot Journey to Maggie. Okay, Journey to Maggie was there. Okay, and Arrow of God, the title refers to the Isilu's own image of himself. So this was all about the three important works of Chinua Achebe. Okay. Now, next work is the Man of the People. Now, it narrates the conflict between Odili and you can say that former teacher Nanga. Okay, so there was a person named as Nanga who was a teacher, and it deals with the conflict between Odili and Nanga. And Odili basically is a symbolic representation of the radical views, whereas Nanga represents traditional Nigerian customs in the story. So as I told you, Nanga was a former teacher, so that's why he was elder than Odili, and he represents the traditional Nigerian values or customs, whereas Odili has been brought it up into a new Africa, so that's why he represents radical views. Okay, so who were the two characters in this particular work? Odili and Nanga. So Nanga was a former teacher who represents African traditional views or Nigerian customs, and Odili is a person who represents radical views. Is this clear? Please like the session to mark your attendance. Okay. Next is Ant Hills of Savannah. Now, this novel is told in several narrative voices, okay, and giving bold analysis of African politics. So African politics, African, you can say that world has been portrayed in this particular work, Anthills of Savannah. And please remember, this novel has not been narrated by a single person. Different narrative voices are there in this particular work, so it is a kind of a complex reading, okay. And where it has been set in the imaginary West African country of Kangan, okay. So there was a West African country, Kangan is there, in which this particular work has been set up, and there are various several voices of narration, and this particular work is the analysis of the African politics. Please remember these points. Okay, so this was all about Chinua Achebe. I hope I have made myself clear with all the works. I've told you the important things of these works. Please make a reading of this African trilogy, and please make the note of the important characters and the setting of these particular works. Okay, so let's move ahead now. Okay, next is Nandi Godima. So this is again a very important African writer, and like Chinua Achebe was a Nigerian author, he is a Kenyan author. Okay, he is born in Kenya, so he is Kenyan writer. Okay, so he is a Kenyan writer. Please remember the nationality as well, because again I have told you for various authors कि उनके works का पूछा जाता है setting. If you know the author's background, so you can easily make a guess of the work's setting. Okay, so please remember that Nandi Godima is a Kenyan-born writer, and he is a novelist, and he is also a post-colonial theorist. Okay, so please remember the very important point about Nandi Godima, that he has rejected English and choose to write in his native language. Okay, and what was his native language? It is Gikuyu. Okay. Gikuyu is his native language, so he has rejected. Okay, so again, when I told you about the post-colonial theory, I told you that the independence is not only from the rule. Independence should be from every point of view: the race, ethnicity, gender, language. Okay, so here Nandi Godima has advocated the fact that we have got independence, but if we have not rejected English as the main language, then we have been not set ourselves free in the true sense. Okay, so that's why we should promote our native language rather than adopting English to write our views. Okay, so that's why he has rejected English and chose to write in Gikuyu language. Okay, and please remember again that he's a Kenyan writer who used to write in Gikuyu language, and he was from the Gikuyu descent, and he began a very successful career writing in English before actually turning completely to writing in Gikuyu language. Okay, and his works are known for universality of the characters, and through the characters are shown to are the models of struggle and always move out and be translated to other cultures. Okay, so this was all about Nandi Godima, and please remember this, his characters are known for universality. Okay, and in universality in both language, culture, and so in his work, language and culture are inseparable. Okay, if you are adopting the culture, if you are showing the culture of the African people, then you have to show the culture in your native language, not English. Okay, so that gives a more cultural sense. Okay, cultural richness is there when you portray the culture in the language of that particular culture. So this was a belief of Nandi Godima when it comes to African writings. Is it clear? Okay, so now let's go with the work. So first of all, the first work is Weep Not Child. Now this is a novel of childhood which is based on his personal experiences. Okay, so he basically in this particular work was the Kenyan youth to build the nation, and towards the end of the story reject romantic individualism of the hero. Okay, so basically it is a kind of a, like, American scholar was there. ठीक है. इमर्सन का जो वर्क था अमेरिकन स्कॉलर, इन दैट ऑल्सो इमर्सन सेलिब्रेटेड द स्कॉलर. एंड व्हाई ही हैज सेलिब्रेटेड द अमेरिकन स्कॉलर्स? आफ्टर अमेरिका गॉट इंडिपेंडेंस फ्रॉम द ब्रिटिश रूल. ठीक है. सो उसने क्या कहा था उसमें, द यूथ्स ऑफ अमेरिका आर द फ्यूचर ऑफ द कंट्री एंड दे शुड स्ट्राइव to actually make to for the freedom from all the spheres, intellectual, economical, social. ठीक है. So similarly in this Weep Not Child, Nandi Godima has called upon the African youths. ठीक है. वहाँ पे American youths थे, यहाँ पे African youths है, and they are asking, and he is asking them to build a nation and towards build a nation to a more greater reputation. ठीक है. And but in the end he has rejected the romantic idealism because he said that emotion should not be the part of your you know, that kind of a awakeness. You should totally be there as an individual who is actually striving intellectually to fight for freedom. ठीक है. And he, please remember that Weep Not Child has been deals with his personal experiences as well. Okay. So this is all about Weep Not Child. So he is a kind of a call for African youth. So you can see how the writers of these country after gaining independence totally have a trust on the younger generation to act for bringing a transformation in their country. ठीक है. So Emerson also as well, Nandi Godima, both call for the youth to transform the country into a better one. Is it clear? Fine. Okay. Next is the trial of Deadman Kemathi. So this is again a very important work, and please remember it is an African play which is written in English, and it has some kinship with political plays as well. ठीक है. तो जो political plays इंडिया में लिखे गए थे उनसे कुछ ना कुछ relationship था इस play का, the trial of Dedan Kemathi, and please remember it is an African play. Just a title you have to remember, nothing else. Okay, you don't have to go in the depth of this work. Next is A Grain of Wheat. Again, this particular work is set on the eve of Kenyan independence. Okay, so when the Kenya got independence, on that eve this work has been set and is basically generally, or you can say, seen as a reworking of Conrad's Under Western Eyes. So Joseph Conrad ने work लिखा था Under Western Eyes. So this work, A Grain of Wheat, is a reworking of that particular work. Under Western Eye by Conrad. ठीक है. तो Conrad ने work लिखा था the Under Western Eye. So this is a reworking of that particular work. And please remember this work has been set on the eve of Kenyan independence. Is this clear? Any problem? Okay, in case you have any problem, you can just post in the chat box. I will be answering your doubts. Okay, next is Petals of Blood. Okay, again a very important work, and this novel is being written by Nandi Godima, and it's set in Kenya just after independence. So A Grain of Wheat has been set on the eve of independence, Kenyan independence, and this particular novel has been set just after Kenyan independence. And the story follows the four characters, Munira, Abdullah, Vanja and Karega. These were the four characters of this particular work, whose lives are intertwined due to Mau Mau rebellion. ठीक है. Please remember the Petals of Blood has a reference to Mau Mau rebellion, and it is actually deals with the four characters. And who were these four characters? Abdullah, Karega, Vanja and Munira. These were the four characters, and whose lives have been shown intertwined due to the Mau Mau rebellion. Okay, and these people, these four characters, in order to escape city life, they retreats to the small pastoral village of Imorog. So please check the name. So Imorog was Ilmorog. Yeah, Ilmorog was the name of the village in which they found the retreat because to escape this Mau Mau rebellion. Fine. So this was all about Petals of Blood. Please remember that it has a reference to Mau Mau rebellion, and it deals with the life of four characters whose life has been affected by Maowa rebellion, and they found an escape to again the village. Fine. Okay. Last is decolonizing America. This is a very important work. इससे बहुत बार क्वेश्चंस पे आ चुके हैं आपके decolonizing the mind से. So please remember that it is decolonizing mind is split into 4 essays. ठीक है. So कौन कौन से ऐसे थे? The language of African literature, the language of African theatre, the language of African fiction, and the quest for relevance. Please note down the language of African literature, the language of African theatre, the language of African fiction, and the quest for relevance. These are the 4 parts of this essay, Decolonizing the Mind. Okay, please remember all the 4 parts. Okay, if you want me to repeat again, I can repeat. So if you want me to repeat, then you can just let me know in the chat box. Okay, and this book offers you can say that distinctively anti-imperialistic perspective on the continuing debate. Okay, so again this Ngugi Thiong was really worried about the future of the African nation. That's why he has rejected all the English things that have been imposed upon the Africa. Okay, and the book is basically Ngugi Thiong's farewell to English. Okay, so basically he has written the English tradition, English language. So it is a kind of a farewell. That's why decolonizing the mind. So what the Britishers have colonized the mind of the African people, African natives. Okay, to follow English language, culture, customs. Everything has to be English. So that's why he has written this essay to decolonize the mind, to make them realize that Africa is different from England. Africa should not be England. ठीक है? So जब आप बनाते हो तो ये अफ्रीका होना चाहिए, ये इंग्लैंड होना चाहिए, ये इंग्लैंड और ये अफ्रीका नहीं होना चाहिए. So this was the idea which has been rejected by Ngugi Thiong. So it was this essay was a kind of farewell to the English, and it addresses the language problem for African authors. Okay, so he actually make a call, or it is a clarion call for the African authors to please reject the English from their works and should follow the native language of Africa. Okay, and this essay Ngugi is arguing for African writers to make their expression more native, okay, and rather than more European. ठीक है, so native language जो अफ्रीका की वो आप adopt करो, European language को discard करो. This was the idea put by Ngugi Thiong. And why he said that? He has said that in order to actually renounce lingering colonial ties and to build the authentic African literature. ठीक है, if the African literature will be mixed with the English literature, देन तब भी सुप्रीमेसी इंग्लिश की ही रहेगी, अफ्रीकन की क्या रहेगी. ठीक है, जब आप हर चीज अफ्रीकन लिटरेचर में अफ्रीका की नेटिव वैल्यूज, कस्टम, लैंग्वेज इंक्लूड करोगे, देन योर लिटरेचर विल बी इमर्ज एज अ डिस्टिंक्ट और डिफरेंट लिटरेचर फ्रॉम द इंग्लिश लिटरेचर. सो दिस आइडिया हैज बीन पुट forward by Ngugi Thiong in the decolonizing of mind. So he said that Africa should be this, England should be this. It should not be that England is the bigger authority under which Africa comes. So कुछ culture और कुछ similarities हमारे England से है. So this should not be the idea of the African youths. Is it clear? So this was all about Ngugi Thiong. And please remember all the 4 parts which I have told you about this particular essay. That is the language of African literature, African theatre, the language of African fiction, and the quest for relevance. Okay, so let's move ahead. Next is Ben Okri. Okay, so Ben Okri का एक जो work है The Famished Road, ये आपसे पूछा जाता है. So I will be discussing about this work. So please remember the work The Famished Road by Ben Okri is the Booker Prize winning novel. Okay, so इसमें कौन सा prize जीता? It is the Booker Prize winning novel. Okay, so please remember The Famished Rose has won the Booker Prize in English. Okay, and it is written by the author Ben Okri. And what was the nationality of the Ben Okri? It was Nigeria. ठीक है, Ben Okri थी Nigeria से थी. Like Chinua Achebe, she was from also Nigeria. Okay, and the novel, this particular novel, The Famished Road, follows Azaro. And who was Azaro? He was a स्पिरिट चाइल्ड, और इन स्पिरिट चाइल्ड को अफ्रीकन लैंग्वेज में क्या बोलते हैं, अबीकू, ठीक है, अबीकू था, his name was Azaro, who was a abiku in African culture, and इसको इंग्लिश में क्या बोलते हैं, स्पिरिट चाइल्ड था. Please remember this point, very important point, that he was an abiku. Azaro is an abiku, and what is abiku in English? It is a spirit child, and he is living in an unnamed Nigerian city. The setting has not been named in this particular work, and this particular novel employs you can say magic realism. ठीक है, इस particular novel में हमें magic realism देखने को मिलता है. Can you just name the other diaspora writer or the writer from the British descent जो magic realism अपने works में portray करता था? I told you his work, all of the works deals with the magic realism. Can you just name that writer in the chat box? Please tell me that writer. Who is that writer who is known for using magic realism? I have told you. Okay, so it was Salman Rushdie. I told you Salman Rushdie was the one who is known for writing in for using magic realism in his works. And what is magic realism? Magic realism basically when you just mix realistic events, images, scenes, or you can in general realism with fantasy. Okay, when you just mix realism with fantasy, it is known as magic realism. And that's why this particular novel, The Famished Road, is also called the novel of fantasy literature. Okay, this particular work is also known as novel of fantasy literature because it has been written by using the element of magic realism. And what is magic realism? When you mix fantasy with realism, and that's why this novel, The Famished Road, is known as the novel of fantasy literature. Is it clear? Are you getting it what I am teaching? Please like this session to mark your attendance, and in case you have any doubt, you can just post in the chat box. ठीक है, तो ये राइटर्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. आई होप यू आर नोटिंग डाउन एवरीथिंग विच आई एम dictating and writing on the board. Please note down, make a note of it. It will definitely gonna help you in your preparations. Okay, next is Chinamanda Adichie. Again, a very important writer, and again this writer is from Nigeria. ठीक है, Ben Okri, Chinamanda Adichie, Chinua Achebe, these are all Nigerian writers. Okay, and he has written a very important work, that is Half of a Yellow Sun. ठीक है, full title है इसका Half of a Yellow Sun, not Yellow Sun, Half of a Yellow Sun. This is the full title, not Yellow Sun. Yes, good morning, Mosmi. Okay, so the full title is Half of a Yellow Sun, and please remember that Adichie is a Nigerian writer, and he has written the work Half of a Yellow Sun. And the novel takes place in Nigeria during the Nigeria Biafran War. So Biafran War was there in Nigeria. So this novel has been set during that time. Please remember, like in the previous work, this Petals of Blood has a reference of Mau Mau rebellion in Africa. Similarly, this Half of a Yellow Sun by Chinamanda Adichie has a reference of a Biafran War. Okay, and the effect of this particular war is shown through the dynamic relationship of 5 people that are living over that particular place, and they're ranging from high-ranking political figures to the professor, to British citizens, and to the houseboy. ठीक है, तो हर status और हर group of people को ये war affect करा था, and the effect of this war has been shown through these 5 people, or you say that 5 people who were living over that place. ठीक है, so this as a by effect of war has been shown. Okay, so that was all about Half of a Yellow Sun. Next, Nandi Godima. Again, a very important writer, and you should remember that Nandi Godima is a white South African novelist and short story writer. So she was a white South African writer and a novelist. Please remember the nationality, that she was an white South African writer. Okay, and in his work basically she talks about writer's conscience. ठीक है, so writers की conscience के बारे में she used to talk about, and she wrote the phrase that to gain the freedom the writers must give up his freedom. Okay, so in order to gain his freedom, writer must give up his freedom, means that writers should not bound themselves from any constraints to write their writings. There should not be any rigidness in their writing. So जैसे वो था ना कि एरोपोइटिका by John Milton, उसमें क्या था, freedom of the press. The writer should not be bound by any constraints, and and because the classical writers were not bound by any constraint, that's why they were able to write such classic works. ठीक है, जैसे हमने एरोपोइटिका में पढ़ा था by John Milton, similar idea has been put by Nandi Godima also forward as a writer, that to gain his freedom, writer should give his freedom. Okay, so this was all about Nandi Godima as a writer, and she, please remember that she was awarded Nobel Prize for Literature. And किस नोबेल के लिए उसको लिटरेचर में नोबेल प्राइज मिला था? She was provided the Nobel Prize for the work Conservationist. को नोबेल प्राइज मिला था, ठीक है, प्लीज रिमेंबर. एंड किस वर्क के लिए मिला था? द कंजर्वेशनिस्ट के लिए उसको. Mosmi, I will be bringing a session for literary theory also. In that I'll be talking about the important books. Okay, so this is a session for post-colonial writer. In my lecture of literary theory, I will be talking about that. Okay, fine. Then yes, so we were talking about that. Yes, it's a Nobel Prize winner, and she has been awarded Nobel Prize for the work The Conservationist. Okay, next is A Guest of Honor. So this is the novel about an English colonial administrator who returned to a newly independent African country. Okay, so एक English colonial administrator था जो after जब Africa got independence, that person returned to that country. Fine. Okay, next is The Conservationist. So this is again a very important work, and you know that it won a Booker Prize, and she was also awarded a Nobel Prize for this particular work. And please remember, this particular novel, The Conservationist, is set in South Africa during the time of apartheid movement. ठीक है, जो apartheid जहाँ पे slavery चल रहा था वहाँ पे, और during that time it has been set in South Africa. ठीक है, साउथ अफ्रीका में ये वर्क सेट है, एंड इट टॉक्स अबाउट एंड इट वाज एक्चुअली सेट इन द टाइम व्हेन द अपार्थाइड मूवमेंट वाज गोइंग ड्यूरिंग दैट टाइम. ओके, एंड हु वर द मेन कैरेक्टर? मेहरिंग. सो मेहरिंग इज द मेन कैरेक्टर. Okay, Mehrring is a main character who was a very you can say that he was a rich white businessman whose conservative ways are criticized by his liberal son, and you can say that liberal son and the people surrounding him. Okay, and his search for a meaningful life led him to buy a farm which was run by black people. ठीक है, so ये rich businessman था, he was an English businessman, he was a white businessman, जिसके जो idols थे, उसके customs थे, उसकी जो ideology थी, that was questioned by his son and the people who were surrounded by him. Okay, and what he did, as he was a businessman, he bought a farm, and कौन उसको farm को चलाता था? It was run by black people. And what happened one day, this black foreman whose name was Jacobus, he finds an unidentified dead body on the farm. ठीक है, so Jacobus was a person, and उसने क्या farm में क्या देखा? उसने देखा एक dead body पड़ी हुई है, and he doesn't know whose dead body it was. And since the dead man is black, the police finds no urgency to actually bury this particular body. ठीक है, तो वो बॉडी किसकी थी? एक ब्लैक पर्सन की थी. सो उनको लगा कि अरे इट इज अ ब्लैक पर्सन, जरूरत नहीं है कि इसको हम अच्छे से बरी करें. ओके, एंड ही एक्चुअली लेफ्ट द बॉडी देयर ओनली, एंड ही जस्ट कवर्ड दैट पर्टिकुलर बॉडी विद mud. So the idea of an unknown black man buried in his land begins with a haunt Mehring. ठीक है, so जो Mehring जो businessman था, when he just came to know about this particular incident कि a black man was found dead but he was not given a full burial, this actually started disturbing the Mehring, who was a businessman. Okay, and then what happens, a flood brings the body back to the surface. So उनको proper burial तो दिया नहीं गया था, तो उसको सिर्फ मड से ढक दिया गया था. And then when the flood came, this body again came to the surface. And although the farm workers didn't know about the stranger, they now gave it a proper burial as they were his family member. So this was all the story about the conservationists कि जब वो body ऊपर आ जाती है due to flood, they didn't know whose body it was, and now they felt sorry that they didn't give it proper burial, and now they have given it proper burial as if this particular body is their family member. Okay, so this was all the story of the conservationists. Please remember, it is basically deals with the Mehring, who was a white English businessman. Next is the burgher's daughter. Now the burgher's daughter details a group of white anti-apartheid activists in South Africa. Those were seeking to overthrow the South African government. ठीक है, तो ये deals with होता है कुछ anti-apartheid activists थे in South Africa, जिनका main motive क्या था, to overthrow the South African government. Okay, and please remember, this follows the life, this particular work follows the life of Rosa, who was the title character, as she comes to terms with you can say her father, whose name was Leonard Burger, legacy as an activist in the South African Communist Party. ठीक है, so Burger's daughter, what was the name of the daughter is Rosa, who was the title character, and her father's name was Leonard Burger. ठीक है, so that's why the name is Burger's daughter. Next is My Son's Story. So this particular work tells the story of illicit love. Okay, and you can see that political struggle and apartheid. Again, you can see the apartheid movement has been a sole concern or a sole focus in the works of Nandi Godima. Okay, and who was the main character in this particular work? Sony. And Sony was an educated school teacher and also a colored person, and he slowly throws into the struggle against the white regime. Okay, so she was a colored person, she was a black person, and again she was into that political struggle of apartheid, and she becomes an activist in the end. Okay, so this was all about My Son's Story. So Sony was the main character. Is it clear about Nandi Godima? Any problem? Okay, so let's move ahead now. Next is J.M. Coetzi. So J.M. Coetzi is again a very important writer, and I've told you that I will be discussing about this writer when we're talking about the mock test series. Okay, so now this Coetzi, like Nandi Godima, is a South African writer. He's a South African writer, and he has won the Booker Prize twice. Okay, and basically his work in the heart of the country, it is actually has been turned into a film, and the name of the film was Dust. Okay, इसको film में convert करा गया है, and the name of the film was Dust. Please remember this. Okay, then what happens ki okay, so it was Dust. Next work is Age of Iron. Age of Iron is the you can say the compelling story of a woman dying from cancer. Okay, so there's a woman in this particular work who was dying of cancer, and it actually shows the compelling experiences of that particular woman. Next work is Youth. So now Youth is about the experience of a youth South African in London during 90s. Okay, so basically again this is a youth of South Africa and what were his experiences in London. So it shows the experiences of that youth in this particular work, Youth. Okay, and please remember that Coetzi won the Booker Prize for Disgrace, his next novel. So for the novel Disgrace, he has won the Booker Prize, and this particular novel is set in post-apartheid South Africa. Please remember, this is a very important novel. Please make a reading of it. Disgrace कहाँ पे set थी? Post-apartheid साउथ अफ्रीका, ठीक है, पोस्ट अपार्थाइड साउथ अफ्रीका में दिस नॉवल हैज बीन सेट and it tells the story of a middle-aged professor of English who is basically, you can say that, who is charged with sexual harassment of and seeks refuge in the on his daughter's remote farm. Okay, so what happened? He was a middle-aged professor who has been accused of sexual harassment, and later on he wanted to escape, and where he has escaped? He has escaped to his daughter's remote farm. Okay, so this was a story of disgrace. So you can say that a kind of a shame has been brought to his name. So that's why the title is symbolic of that shame. Fine. So this was all about J.M. Coetzi. Next, George Lemming. Again, an important writer. Please remember that George Lemming is neither a South African writer, neither a you can say the Nigerian writer. He is a Caribbean writer. So मैंने जो आपको कंट्रीज बताई थी जो ब्रिटिश रूल से they have been affected by the British rule and come under the post-colonial writing. So see, I have taken the authors from all these countries and I'm discussing in this particular lecture. Okay, the first work is The Pleasure of Exile. So it is a very pioneer work that attempts to define the place of the West Indian in the post-colonial world. Okay, so जो West India, where does the West India lies in the post-colonial world? So it actually shows the it defines the place of West India. Please remember that. Defines the place of West India in the post-colonial world. Is it clear? Next is In the Castle of My Skin. Again, this is the first novel which has been written by George Lemming, In the Castle of the Skin, and it's the story of boys' adolescence in a small town in Barbados. Okay, so basically there was a boy in this particular who was adolescent, and uske kya experiences rahe that has been shown in the town Barbados. Okay, Barbados में उसके experiences बताए हैं. Okay, and this particular place Barbados is a place where Lemming was also born, and this adolescent boy experience बताए गए Barbados में, and his growing consciousness about colonial situation. So that boy was adolescent. He didn't knew what is happening around him, but as he grew, he came to know about his consciousness also have grown, and he came to know about the colonial situation in Barbados. Okay, so this was all about In the Castle of My Skin. Next is The Immigrants. It describes the arrival of group of West Indies in Britain. So some group of West Indians came to Britain, and he actually described those situations. Fine. Next is Season of Adventure. Now, the Season of Adventure is set in an imaginary island which is known as San Cristobal. San Cristobal was the name of that island, and this is not an actual island, this is an imaginary island, and it shows the adventure in that imaginary island, San Cristobal. Is it clear? So this was all about George Lemming. Let's move ahead. Now V.S. Naipaul. I told you there were two writers when I was teaching Indian literature, that these were the diaspora writers, and they have rejected the name of the Indianness from their name. Okay, so they have rejected the label of Indian writers from their name, and Bharati Mukherjee didn't see herself as an Indian, she sees herself as an American, and this V.S. Naipaul has said that I want to be a writer known for to be known as writer from nowhere and everywhere. Okay, so this I have told you in my Indian lecture, and today we will be discussing about this writer. Now this V.S. Naipaul, the novelist who's actually was born in Trinidad. तो उसके experiences भी Trinidad के में ही based होते हैं. So please remember that he was born in Trinidad, and he was Indian immigrant in Trinidad, and he also won a Nobel Prize for Literature, and he was and he has written various work which actually shows his experiences in Trinidad. Fine. So the first work is In a Free State. Now In a Free State, this particular work has won Naipaul a Booker Prize. ठीक है, उसको इस वर्क के लिए Booker Prize मिला था. Okay, so V.S. Naipaul has won Booker Prize for his work In a Free State. Okay, and it contains, you can say that, three linked narratives describing stories of displaced characters and their personalities. So तीन characters थी जिनकी life interlinked थी. Okay, so same in the Petals of Blood also there were some characters, four characters whose life were interlinked. Similarly in Free State there are three characters whose life are interlinked, and it shows their rationality, okay, displacement of their rationality. Fine, so this was all about In a Free State. I'm not going into depth of these work because only the the main theme or the just a title is enough. Okay, जिसकी ज़रूरत होती है, जिसमें पे questions deep में पूछे जाते हैं, उसको मैं discuss करती हूँ. Fine. Now next is A Bend in the River. Now this is a very important work, and please remember उसके ने दो work लिखे थे, Gorilla and A Bend in the River. Both works display African settings. ठीक है, दोनों works में African setting थी. तो Gorilla and A Bend in the River have African setting. So in A Bend in the River, Naipaul gives a picture of emergent Africa. Okay, so how the Africa is emerging, तो उसने picture of emergent Africa दिखाया है यहाँ पे. So I told you this work has a setting of Africa, so that's why he has shown a picture of emergent Africa, and it focused upon the main character. And what was the name of that main character? That is Salim. Okay, Salim was the main character, and he was an Indian trader who runs a very small shop selling Western goods in Kishangari. Okay, Kishangari was the name of the place where he used to sell the Indian goods over there to the Western people. Okay, he used to sell the Indian goods, and you can say that the big man like Kurt's figure in the first ruler of the independent Congo, whose, you can say that, powers lead him to nationalize the business of foreigners, including Salim's shop, which passes to alcoholic African. Okay, so later on this shop got passed to an alcoholic African because of the man like Kurtz in that particular island. Okay, next is Enigma of Arrival. Now this Enigma of Arrival is considered as an autobiographical novel, and it describes Trinidadian experience of post-imperial England. ठीक है, so basically it is being considered as an autobiographical novel. ठीक है, please make a special note of it that the Enigma of Arrival is a autobiographical novel, and it tells the by V.S. Naipaul's personal experience of post-imperial England. ठीक है, so as I told you that V.S. Naipaul was born in Trinidad, and his works basically is concerned about his experience in Trinidad. Okay, so please remember this work, The Enigma of Arrival. Next is The Mimic Men. Now this Mimic Men is about Naipaul's encounter with English people. Okay, so when Naipaul has an encounter or a meet with the English people, उसका experience is Mimic Men में बताए गए हैं. Fine. Last is The House of Mr. Biswas. Very important work. Please make a reading of this. Again, the questions इससे बहुत पूछे जाते हैं. The House of Mr. Biswas. So please remember this novel is set in Trinidad. Okay, setting आपको पता होना चाहिए. तभी मैं कहती हूँ कि आपको पता होना चाहिए कि जो राइटर आप पढ़ रहे हो वो कहाँ का राइटर है, कौन से नेशन का राइटर है, कौन सिटी का राइटर है. ठीक है, क्योंकि फिर आपको सेटिंग गेस करना इजी हो जाता है. तो वी.एस. नाइपोल इज अ राइटर फ्रॉम ट्रिनिडाड, एंड उसकी जो मेन फेमस नॉवल है द हाउस ऑफ मिस्टर बिस्वास इज ऑल्सो सेट इन ट्रिनिडाड. ओके, एंड इट कंटेन्स लेटर्स. ओके, द स्टोरी ट्रेसेस द फॉर्च्यून ऑफ Mr. Biswas, his journey as a journalist and his eventual marriage. Okay, so first he was a journalist, उसका career दिखाया गया है, and then his marriage is also being portrayed in this work. Now this particular house, the house of Mr. Biswas, has some symbolical significance. Okay, and it has been taken as a symbolic metaphor of his life, which has acquired shortly before his death. Okay, so this actually shows his life. Okay, which has been acquired before his death. So this has a symbolic significance. Okay, is this clear? Okay, now let's move to the last writer of today's session, that is Wole Soyinka. Now Wole Soyinka again is a Nigerian dramatist. Okay, he's a Nigerian dramatist, a writer. Okay, Nigerian dramatist. Please remember, Chinua Achebe, then Wole Soyinka are all Nigerian people. Okay, Ajimanda Adichie. Okay, Chinmanda Adichie, she was also from Nigeria. Okay, so this he was awarded Nobel Prize for Literature and the first African to be honored in this category. Please remember, Wole Soyinka is the first African. अच्छा चलो मुझे बताओ चैट बॉक्स में, मैंने आई हैव टॉट यू अबाउट द ऑस्ट्रेलियन राइटर्स, हु इज द फर्स्ट ऑस्ट्रेलियन टू बी अवॉर्डेड अ नोबेल प्राइज. मैंने लास्ट लेक्चर में ही बताया था हु इज दैट फर्स्ट ऑस्ट्रेलियन टू बी अवॉर्डेड अ नोबेल प्राइज. प्लीज लेट मी नो इन द चैट बॉक्स. आई एम वेटिंग. Please let me know in the chat box who is that first Australian to be awarded a Nobel Prize. Okay, I told you that Patrick White, he's the first Australian writer to be awarded a Nobel Prize. Similarly, Wole Soyinka is the first African to be honored with the Nobel Prize. Okay, and his major works are like Swamp Dwellers, The Dance of the Forest, The Interpreters, and Death of the King Horseman. Now, the Swamp Dwellers is the first work which was written by then the Lion, Swamp Dwellers, and then The Dance of the Forest. Now, The Dance of the Forest is about Nigerian independence. Okay, so please remember the Swamp Dwellers. Please make a reading of it. Dance of Forest deals with Nigerian independence. Okay, please remember कि independence कौन सी, Nigeria के independence has been depicted. The Dance of the Forest and The Interpreters is again a very important work of Wole Soyinka, and it captures, you can say that it captures idealism of youth, of young Nigerian youth regarding development in New Africa. ठीक है, so जो idealism होता है, जो idealistic का mindset लेके चलते हो कि our country should be like this. ठीक है, so that has the idealism of the young Nigerians has been depicted in this particular work regarding the development of New Africa. Fine. Next, Death and the King Horseman. It is a play. Okay, it is a play. Please remember. This is a play by Wole Soyinka, and it builds upon the true story that focuses on the character, that is Ellison. So Ellison was a main character, and it focuses on Ellison, and it is based on a true story. And Ellison was the king's horseman, and you can say that the king's horseman title, Death and the King's Horseman. So the king's horseman was Ellison. Please remember that. Okay, and this particular story focuses on the character Ellison, and according to Yoruba tradition, the death of chief must be followed by the ritual suicide of the chief horseman. ठीक है, अगर उसका chief मर जाए तो chief horseman का रहना मतलब नहीं है. ठीक है, so if a chief has died, then the chief's horseman should also die. And who was that horseman? Ellison. So that's why it deals with the fate of king's horseman, that is Ellison. Okay, so it is based on this particular myth. Okay, I hope I have made myself clear with most of the writers I have discussed about South Africa, Africa, Nigeria. So ये सब के authors मैंने discuss करे हैं इस lectures में. And please make a note that these all authors are very important from the exam point of view. आप कोई भी previous year से question उठा के देख लो या paper उठा के देख लो, इनमें से किसी author के बारे में ज़रूर पूछा गया होगा. ठीक है? So I have picked the important authors and their works and have discussed about the title and the settings as well. जिनके मैंने नहीं डिस्कस करे वर्क्स, प्लीज रिमेंबर दैट उनके सिर्फ आपको टाइटल्स ही इंपॉर्टेंट है. Fine. So I hope you have enjoyed the session. You have made your notes. You have copied all the important points and noted down all the important details which I have dictated for the important works. Okay. So please stay tuned for the 1 p.m. session to solve some MCQs of the previous years. And please like the session. Comment your views about the session. In case you have doubt also, you can post on the comment section. And please subscribe to the channel for more such updates. I hope you have enjoyed the session and you have a lot of substance to revise when you just I will be switching off the video. Okay, thank you so much everyone.